Good morning, and thank you everybody for joining us once again. We want to give you an update about.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ron Trevino. We're taking you live to Austin now, where the governor is about to give an update on the severe weather impacting Texas. Let's listen in.
Across most of Texas, and most of the state will continue to sub-freezing temperatures for a few more nights. Tonight, it's anticipated that the entire state will be in a freezing or below freezing temperature situation. Importantly, though, the power grid continues to perform well at peak demand during this winter storm. Peak power demand was about 69,000 megawatts earlier this morning. We do not expect demand to exceed that amount for the rest of this storm. Very importantly, at the height of the power generation supply, more than 86,000 megawatts of power was available to serve demand on the grid. That's important because that far exceeds the estimated peak demand during last year's winter storm. ERCOT forecasted that peak demand during Winter Storm Uri was about 77,000 megawatts. That's about 9,000 megawatts less than this year's highest available power supply. The actions taken by the legislature, by the PUC, and by ERCOT have resulted in a stronger grid. The power grid's strength of position is a result of Texas having about 15% more power generation capacity than last year. It's a result of the winterization that protected power generation facilities across the state. It's also a result of the increase in power generators online because of improved maintenance schedules. It's also a result of the availability of alternative fuels for generators to use to generate power. It's also a result of having all participants in the power generation chain work collaboratively together to make sure that each component was doing their part to get power to homes and to businesses across the state. As I said yesterday, and I can say again today, the Texas electric grid is more reliable and more resilient than it's ever been. Now, I want to go over what ERCOT expects for the power demand and capacity for both today as well as tomorrow. Graph 1 shows, it's the one over here, Graph 1 shows expected power demand for the next 2 days, the power generation capacity that is expected, and a breakdown of the sources of that power, whether it be wind, solar, or thermal. It shows that there is plenty of power expected for both today as well as tomorrow. At the expected peak demand over the next 2 days, there should be about 17,000 megawatts of extra power capacity. That's enough extra power to supply more than 3 million homes across the state. This other graph shows the current demand for power in Texas at this time. The current demand is the bottom line, and then the top line is the current available capacity of power from the grid. The last I saw, it shows that there's about 15,000 megawatts of extra power over current demand, which again is about enough to fuel and power 3 million homes across the state. Also at this time, despite having abundant supply in the power grid in the state of Texas, there remain about 20,000 customers in Texas without power. And like we explained yesterday, the reason for that loss of power is obviously not because the power grid doesn't have the power that's needed. Instead, it's an issue at the local power provider level. Once again, the most probable cause of the lack of power for those customers is either wind knocking down power lines, or more likely, ice weighing down lines, or ice causing problems with trees that either trees or tree limbs would fall on power lines. I even saw one story yesterday where a vehicle ran into a power pole, knocking the power pole down, and knocking that power pole down resulted in a loss of power to an entire region. And what needed to be done was for the utility officials to be able to come out remove the vehicle that ran into the power pole, erect a new power pole, and get power reinstalled. And so that just takes a while when incidents like this occur during the course of a storm like this. The good news is when we were here with you at this time yesterday, there were about 70,000 Texans without power. And now that number has been reduced to about 20,000 Texans. And that's a result of all these local officials and especially the utility companies working around the clock. I want to express my gratitude for the linemen who have been out in sub-freezing temperatures in ice 24/7, working all night long, all day long, in very inclement weather to make sure they get power restored. Anyone who loses power should call their local power provider. If you need help identifying your local power provider or getting their contact information, go to puc.texas.gov/storm. That's puc.texas.gov/storm. The agencies represented at the table will be telling you about new developments in what they are working on. I do want to emphasize that we still have more than 24 state agencies that are working 24/7 to help Texans be able to deal with and respond to this storm. That includes the Texas Military Department. They have over 125 personnel and 50 vehicles rostered and will continue to add more as needed. In addition to their operations around the state that I told you about yesterday, also yesterday, the Military Department assisted 10 stranded motorists and evacuated 5 personnel and assisted 2 emergency vehicles. They are also adding 5 wreckers to the Kerrville area to assist in the recovery in that area that you will hear more about from 2 other agencies shortly. On the Texas A&M Forest Service, they have been incredibly busy trying to clear ice off of roads to make roads more passable. As a few examples, they bladed about 60 miles of Interstate 20 near Abilene and assisted more than 200 motor vehicles and helped clear a 7-mile standstill that freed up 1,000 stopped motor vehicles yesterday. They added vehicles and personnel so that motor graders in that Abilene region can stay operational for 24 hours throughout this winter event. Also, the motor graders assigned to Brownwood are continuously blading a 48-mile stretch of Interstate 20 in both Eastland and Callahan counties. And yesterday, they helped remove 8 semi-trucks that were in a pileup, as well as, in doing so, preventing other vehicles from becoming a part of that pileup. And yesterday, the motor grader assigned to the San Angelo region bladed about 75 miles in that area, as well as the motor graders assigned to the Amarillo region bladed parts of Interstate 27 as well as service roads to that highway. That's all for the updated reports from these agencies. Next to the Chairman of the Public Utilities Commission.
Thank you, Governor. As you know, the grid was ready for this event. It is performing as expected, and it's more reliable than it has ever been. The historic reforms that we have implemented at the direction of the legislature and the governor mean that we have more power available than before, more backup for generators than before, and more reliability than ever before, especially in severe winter weather events like this. Our operational changes mean that we are operating with a conservative management approach on the grid. We have more power reserves, resulting in a bigger margin of safety, and we're using an abundance of caution by turning on more generators sooner rather than later. Our weatherization requirements mean that our generators meet and exceed federal winterization standards, and we're seeing the benefits of that during this winter storm. We've worked closely with the Railroad Commission to designate critical natural gas infrastructure to ensure gas continues to flow to our generators, and made many other resources available as part of our market reforms. Our generators and poles and wires companies have pre-positioned crews around the state to reduce the number of outages rapidly, as the governor stated. They have worked throughout the night to ensure that happens. The outages that we have seen are all local outages unrelated to any system issues or grid reliability issues, as you can see on the screens behind us. Continue to report outages to your local power providers by going to puc.texas.gov/storm. The grid remains strong, and it's more reliable than it has ever been. We implemented more reforms in a shorter amount of time than any other grid in the U.S. for winter storms like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is the CEO of ERCOT, Brad Jones.
Thank you, Governor. Overnight, as you know, we hit our highest load of this winter event. In fact, it came early this morning. During that time, our generation and transmission partners in the grid have operated admirably. We have no confirmed outages of any equipment related to weather. So we believe that the weatherization event and our preparations have been extraordinary and been very successful to date. We continue to see high loads coming this evening and tomorrow morning. So we will remain at our highest level of alert to our system called a watch. That watch has been in effect since Wednesday. We will continue that throughout several more days. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Commissioner Craddock with the Texas Railroad Commission.
Thank you, Governor. Good morning. The residential distribution companies and gas utilities still do not have any significant service interruptions to the residential customers and have additional support crews available. So your heat should be on, your gas should be on into your home. If you have an outage, though, contact your local supplier. In this morning's operator briefing, approximately 110 operations are continuing in the oil and gas world as usual, and they are responding to the current weather conditions and demands. The takeaway from our operator meeting this morning was that we are operating as expected with natural gas coming into the system. Fluctuations in production have been brief and expected. Operators recovered during the day yesterday and continue to work to resolve any issues through the night and going forward. Pipelines report that line pack of natural gas remains stable. As planned, underground storage draw continues to offset any production variances and increase demand. The system is working as it should. I want to thank the energy workers across the state who are working around the clock in freezing temperatures and below to keep the gas flowing in Texas. And thank you to our Railroad Commission team and the inspectors who are out on the ground as well. But gas is still flowing and the system is working.
Thank you. And next we have the Executive Director for TCEQ, Toby Baker.
Thank you, Governor. I'm happy to report that the impact on water systems across the state has been minimal. And but because of that, I do want to repeat what I said yesterday. We're going to have ongoing cold weather. So I expect that we will have more frozen pipes and you could be impacted. So please follow your local utility. If you see a line break in the street, please report it. Make sure you note the location of that so your utility can get out and fix that. If you have a break in your wall or in your yard, please turn the water off at the street. And if you don't know how to do that, go to our website, www.tceq.texas.gov, and we have a video that will show you how to do that. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you very much. Next we have the Executive Director for the Texas Department of Transportation, Mark Williams.
Thank you, Governor. Roads throughout the state continue to be icy, and we're working to fully address problem spots. We're continuing to deal with, in particular, some heavy areas of icing and really stubborn ice that is due to low temperatures and the ice accumulation that we have had over the past 24 to 48 hours. Our TxDOT crews have been working shifts continuously and assisted, as was noted by our partner.
We have been listening to the governor and other officials giving us an update on the winter storm and the power grid. The governor says the grid continues to perform well, more reliable than it's ever been, he says. He says there's enough power for the next few days of these freezing temperatures. And let's talk about those freezing temperatures now. Let's bring in Cheetah Craft. Hey, Cheetah.
Hey, well, take a look at the state. I mean, you can see why they're talking about this. 27 in Dallas, 22 in Abilene. Now, 15 in Amarillo. That's actually up from 1 degree earlier this morning. 30 degrees here in Houston. I think as we just climb past our lunchtime hour, right around noon, we will actually start to see these temperatures nearing the freezing point or maybe even just a hair above. Across the state, no new precipitation to talk about. So that's the good news. There won't be any new ice, sleet, or that freezing rain to talk about. But the clouds are what's trapping that cold air at the surface, and that's what we're monitoring right now. We did even have a few pellets of some of that freezing rain or sleet even out of Pearland. That was reported about 30 minutes ago. Our winter weather advisories, 2 are expected to expire right around lunchtime. So we're going to come back on for the noon show in just a little bit, and we'll show you what's still in effect. But I do want to leave you with the last look at our feels like. These wind chills. If you're at home and you're comfy and cozy and you're warm right now, you just stay put. These are going to be in the teens to 20s to maybe low 30s, Ron, by the afternoon, but really majority of the day today, we're going to be feeling in the 20s area-wide. So a really cold Friday and Saturday morning. I'll send it back to you.
Bone-chilling
Yes.
cold. All right, thank you so much, Cheetah Craft. Stay connected online at khou.com and download the KHOU app. Sherman Chow will see you at noon. I'm Ron.